Welcome to what I call healing from within. And I appreciate everyone being here tonight on this seminal meeting. I received a ton of questions from you, and I'm going to try to answer every one that I can. There's certain ones that group in a certain subject, and other ones that are a little bit more, let's just call them particular. All right. And this whole Zoom meeting is based on some of my own experiences, but also listening and learning from others. But what gave it the impetus was my own experience that you have read about a couple days now, and that is from my hip issue. So I'm about to tell you about that. But before that, I want to just stop the share, and I want to share something with you. No matter what physical challenge you might be going through, here's something to think about. I invite you to close your eyes right now and imagine the moment that you decided to come here to this planet to have a human experience. This journey is not for the faint of heart. Now, this is with your eyes closed, please. Because your soul chose a series of major themes and challenges in your life. And each challenge helps your soul evolve. So no matter how daunting the challenge you may be experiencing, accepting it and learning from it will help you develop your mastery and liberate you from this issue. Part of what you'll learn in this meeting will be how your life experiences have created a series of thoughts, emotions, and energy that became trapped in your body. It happens to all of us as human beings. And the more you think those same thoughts and emotions, they become hardwired. Your fight or flight response, in other words, your sympathetic nervous system, which creates a cascade of negative hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, etc., and eventually the slow breakdown of your cells, your tissues, and your organs. So what we're saying is your thoughts are powerful enough to create disease states in your body. So what if your thoughts can create disease, what would happen if you created peaceful thoughts and rewired and rebalanced your nervous system? And of course, I'm not talking about just conscious thoughts. These also turn into unconscious thoughts. You could create wellness in your body. So a little bit about my background in terms of what started me on this journey of having this Zoom meeting tonight. About 3 years ago, I had a lot of pain going on in my hips. This is well after my partner Susan passed away, and it was kind of nagging at me worse than ever. So, I would visit my chiropractor, and he said, "Well, let's get an X-ray. Let's rule things out." I remember bringing the CD with the X-ray back into his office a day later. He's scanning it, and he turns to me, and he's got this interesting look on his face, and he says, "Come here. This isn't so good." And he pointed out that the space that's supposed to be between the femur head of your leg and the acetabulum, which is the hip socket, was like not there. And he says, "So I don't see any cartilage." And so he didn't say bone on bone, but we've heard that phrase many times before. If you have had anybody in your family, or if you've experienced any type of knee or hip issues, when you get to bone on bone, it's not the warmest diagnosis. And I remember sitting there, and I could take bad news pretty well, but I was kind of almost stunned. I couldn't get my composure back for what felt like 10 minutes. So then I did get my composure back, asked him a couple questions, and the vision came to me like this feeling of, all right, I'm going to be back here months from now. We'll be talking about how did you do that. Now, I didn't say these words to him because he's kind of a conservative chiropractor. I didn't want to upset his boat, but this was the feeling in me, like, okay, we're going to heal this. Cool. All right. So that's the impetus for tonight's call. So this was my wake-up call, and it opened my eyes in a big way, like, whoa. All right. So I had to study regenerative medicine because another chiropractor who I met just several weeks after that, who was checking out something different, like in my neck, it was just like a standard thing. He reads the CD and he says, Now this guy, he winced when he said to me, he said, "I've got some good news and I've got some not so good news." And I'm like, yeah, I get it, right? he's about to ask me a question. Have you ever considered? And I said, nope, we're not going there. He says, why not? And I said, because I believe in my body's ability to heal. And so he had this big smile on his face. He goes, oh, that's right. You're one of those. And his name was Greg, and he's just a cool guy. And I love the smile on his face because he's like, wow, I don't need to turn on okay, here's all the dozens of sessions you need to come to me for and x-rays every 2 weeks, et cetera, et cetera. Wow, this guy is different. Yeah. So that night, after he told me about a therapy that I could do, I was Googling it on the way home. I read the ebook that night about therapy, and I thought, wow. Now, I'm not saying this therapy was the do-all, end-all, by the way, because it wasn't, but it was the starting point. And because our symptoms force us to pay attention, that's what was going on with me. This thing was waking me up, this hip thing. Like, Now, this was just the first step. As you listen to your body, things are going to go on as you do that listening. So again, I want you to close your eyes, and I'm going to invite you to do something kind of simple here. I want you to think of this physical challenge that you experience in your life. Tune into it. Feel it. Now, say this phrase to yourself: I can heal this issue. And listen to the first thing that your subconscious says, even if you're not experienced with how to listen to your subconscious. What's the first thing you feel when you say that phrase? I can heal this issue. Take your time. If you're listening to this as a video, turn the video, pause it, and do this process. I promise you, this will reap dividends for you, because if your subconscious is other than in agreement with that, there is one of the reasons why the changes, the transformation, or the healing that you've been seeking hasn't happened yet. Remember, the subconscious holds over 90% and controls over 90% of all your thoughts, emotions, actions, and behavior. We want to inquire within the subconscious to find out what's happening. So we're not talking about just an affirmation. This is a communication pathway that we're building here. This is huge. Okay, now you can open your eyes. If you want to write that down, that's cool. Now I'm going to show you my screen here. Let's see how I do this. We're going to do this. So in this graph, you're going to notice something interesting. And that is, in the left-hand side of the graph, this is the early part of your life. And it peaks, that graph that's in red, that line, peaks right when your adulthood starts, and then starts declining. And you can see the decline is fairly rapid. It looks like, what do you want to call that? A toboggan hill, or a mountain. And the slope is not exactly uneven. It's like straight down. So when you go from adulthood to mid-adulthood to old age, this aging process kicks in terms of our conventional belief systems, by the way. That's the caveat that's very important to point out. And the more that our bodies begin to, let's say, believe in aging, or feel the aging, or the inevitable decline happens, the energy drops, the healing ability drops, and I'm going to touch on things like stem cells in a little while, and what you can do about them. Now, it's important to point out something else is happening in the background, and that is, on the left-hand side, you'll see that we're talking about muscle strength on the y-axis, and on the x-axis is your age. So as you age, your muscle strength declines. If you've done any study in terms of immune system, health, your basal metabolic rate, your body fat percentages, etc., you know that your muscle strength is tremendously correlated to your health levels. The more muscle you have, the stronger you are, the healthier you are. You'll notice that muscular people don't get sick very often. I don't mean bodybuilders per se. What I mean is people who work out, people who take good care of themselves, people who are trim, people who, like work out in general, at whatever that word means for you, workout, okay? And this decline that happens in muscle strength is completely correlated to the graph that we talked about before with aging. But there are some people, there are many people in our culture that have slowed that decline. And in some cases, it plateaus and it starts turning up again because you take control of your health. You take your health back from Western medicine, from giving it away to whatever or whoever. And this is probably one of the biggest pieces of news that I can share with you is when you start taking your health back. Now, there are 3 levels of healing. And this is really near and dear to my heart. The first level, the one that we're concerned with on tonight's webinar, at least at the topical level, is the physical level of healing. All right. And that's where we're going to do our workouts and we do our nutrition and, you know, how's our physique, you know, what nutrients, what supplements, who are my teachers, my guides, my doctors, you know, my therapists, etc. That's all fantastic. And taking good care of your physical body is incredibly important, right? Something is important to point out to you, and that is, if you've ever heard of a book called Power versus Force by David Hawkins, he says this salient phrase, and I will never forget it. Cause cannot be found in the physical. In other words, the cause of whatever lack of ease or dis-ease of the body cannot be found in the body. Tell that to your standard doctor, and they're going to think that you've got holes in your head. You're out of my range. You got to talk to somebody else. You're getting weird on me, right? That's what most doctors say to me. Oh my God, there's another one of those. You know, we're going to go a little deeper now. All right. So the next level, and this is super important, is the emotional level. This is what creates the density of this stuff in our bodies. And a little experience that I shared with you at the very beginning, when we first started, about feeling within yourself about why you came here. This emotional soul-based journey is not one of simplicity and straight lines. No, instead, you've got peaks and valleys. You've got up and down in terms of emotions, right? Whenever you have experienced any form of negative emotions, traumas, etc. in your life, what happens is many of those, more than we can imagine, get deposited in the body, not just the mind. Because your body is like the recording device for your mind. Now, there's one more level, and that's the energetic level. So when we say energetic, we mean what is beneath the emotions. There's energy. There is things like karma. There's the beneath the cellular structure is the energy that creates it, like the energy that's creating every beat of your heart right now as we speak. Think of that for just a moment. Feel your heart. You know, you could put your heart artery and feel the heartbeat, or you could put your hand on your heart. Feel your heartbeat and ask yourself, what's creating that heartbeat? Now, I've asked this before in other videos that I've done, and people, I think the quick gloss over answer is, that's God. I don't mean at that level. What I mean is, what's creating that spark? It's something that is not of the physical level. It's the energetic level. It's something that can't be explained, but it gives rise to all the other levels above it. So if we want to heal any form of lack of ease in the body or in the mind, we need to get deeper into the emotional and into the energetic levels. And now that's when you get profound healings. So let's talk about something that in my discovery with my hip issue, the disc, not the disc, but the cartilage that was degenerating, what I started slowly realizing was that when my partner Susan passed, it was a deep emotional trauma for me. Plus, before she passed, right? I remember back in 2016 running the fields of Ecuador, up mountaintops, getting my heart rate up to about 165 beats per minute, you know, doing fantastic. I had no pain, zero. Fast forward the tape, not even barely 2 years, and the pain had set in. And by 2019, the pain is like locking up my hips. So what happened? Well, as my slide here shows, there were deeper effects than I previously knew, right? And for you as well. So there are traumas that have happened in your life, whether you are aware of the trauma, whether they be micro traumas, like little disrespects by other people, someone who you thought cared for you, who shut you down. Unknowingly, they didn't maybe intend it, but you felt hurt. Those are like little micro traumas. Then the big ones come along, your mother, your father, your sweetheart, like in my situation, your favorite family dog, whatever form of trauma that happened, that trauma doesn't just disappear. It gets lodged into the body, into the cellular memory. Now, as time goes on, we make discoveries like in what's called the ACE study made back in the 90s by Kaiser Permanente. And what Kaiser discovered was over 30,000 people over a long period of time, that the people that had the greatest amount of disease in their physical body had the greatest amount of not just trauma, but multiple occurrences of trauma in their lives. Not just one trauma, but a series of multiple traumas. And that there was almost a one-to-one correlation between multiple traumas and a disease state that would happen in that person's life. Wow. Now think of that for yourself. So there's this thing that's going on in my physical body, as you're saying this to yourself. And what if any issues in my life could be maybe touchstones or causal or related? So the good news is when you release trauma, you release the energy that's been holding this disease state in the body, no matter what the issue is. When the trauma releases, the energy comes up and out. It's almost like it comes through your pores in a way. You feel lighter. I could ask each one of you offline, how does it feel to have that issue? And it's not an inspired feeling. It has a heaviness to it. It's dense. And the place where it collects is this physical body. That's why it feels so heavy or painful. Painful is another word to describe it. Or, oh, it's so irritating. Right. So now let's talk about something that's really profoundly interesting. Let's say that you got a X-ray or a diagnosis, a CT scan, an MRI, and the doctor says to you, you know, this isn't looking so good. You can see it on their face when they're walking in the door or over the phone, or you got it through email and you're trying to read the radiology report and you're trying to make sense of it. And it says, you have blank. This is why this is important. The error rate of those readings. Now, this is per a doctor on Susan's team years ago. I'm going to tell you a real story that happened. I was sitting in the IR, the interventional radiology department at a hospital. I won't name the hospital. And I got her CT scan, the report that was with it. I'm reading it, and the tumor shrunk dramatically. And this was the worst case scenario that she was in. And I'm thinking, okay, that's not possible. She just had a CT scan just a week ago. I mean, I believe in quick healings, but there's something not right, because I saw her minutes before this and she was in terrible shape. So I knew it was wrong, and I brought it to the head of the IR department, and he says, I go, hi, Dr. So-and-so. He says, hey, Paul, what's going on? Because we, unfortunately knew each other on a first name basis. And he reads this and he says, what is this? And I said, can you read that sentence right there? And he goes, yeah, wait, this is Susan's? Well, that's wrong. And I said, well, he said, where did you get this from? I said, it's from across the hallway. He says, no way, not possible. Tell you what, let me go address this and I'll be back. He didn't come back for a half an hour. I had to go back upstairs to be with Susan. I then talked to her doctor a couple nights later, and he said, Paul, I need to tell you something. Over 50% of the time, these scans are wrong. Now, the question I just popped up on the screen there was, what if they're wrong? What if the diagnosis isn't 100% true? Through what's called informed consent, they have to tell you something that sounds like the truth to them. And because they're trying to save their you-know-what. Because If they don't tell you that it could be cancerous or that it's arthritic or osteo this and osteo that, or you're never going to get better because that's just not what happens with this disease. That's just their opinion. And your job as a tech that I worked with the other day said to me, she said, Paul, you know what? You have to be your own advocate. And she was right. I mean, I smiled at her. I said, if more people knew that you need to be the one that questions the authority. So now let's do something kind of cool. And I'm fond of doing things like this because we want experience along with concept along with knowledge. I want you to close your eyes, step back. Now, this is not a calming exercise per se. This is going to be a little different. I want you to take a deep breath and hold your breath for as long as you possibly can. Let's do it now. Keep holding it. Keep holding. You don't force yourself here. Just hold it as long as you possibly can. And release whenever it feels comfortable, unless you already did. Now, the reason why I was brought to do this exercise with you was because what did that bring up in you? How did you respond to that? Did you gasp after 15 seconds? Could you hold it that long? Your ability to hold your breath and not have to do anything other than that for more than 15 or 20 or as much as 30 seconds shows your ability to hold oxygen, how your lungs can hold that oxygen energy. Some people can't do it more than for 10 seconds, maybe 15 at the most. What did it bring up? If it brought up any feeling of fear, this is a good thing, all right? You want to be able to talk to these parts of you, your subconscious, your body, to release some of this stored energy, not all at once, piece by piece, because as time goes on, you can release this stuff that has built up. That's my hope, my wish. I can't say a promise because everyone's different. But if your heart and soul is in this, you will have some healings of some kind as you explore into what's going on in your body. Now, I have a question for you as we move on. In terms of your physical habits, how often do you exercise? If you're taking notes, and I hope you do, instead of just sitting there listening to this passively, if you're listening to it passively, you're only going to learn like maybe 30 or 40% of what we're actually talking about. There will be little or no experience. But if you write things down, how often do you exercise? Twice a week? Once a week? Do you exercise at all? Are you unable to exercise? Is that even true? Like, in other words, if you're bedridden, if you can't move the way you want, some of you said mobility is a challenge for you, and I understand that. I've been through some pretty strong pain too, but I still got my buns moving. You know, if my hips were bugging me back in those days, I would do an upper body workout. You know, I would do like isometrics. I would clench my muscles while I was sitting. You know, I would stretch. You'll often see people like Paul doing this. You know, opening up the lats like this. You know, you can give yourself a pretty darn good stretch by just moving while you're sitting. So that's question number one. Question number two is, and really get your heart beating. That's the next step. Because if you don't get your heart rate up, you're not going to burn off some of that stuff that's been developing in your bloodstream or in your organs. You know, the body needs exercise. You know this. You've heard this from other experts, right? I'm not your physical expert. I'm just here to say, if there's something that's pulling you back from the exercise that you want, challenge it and say, yeah, you know what? I'm not going to listen to that. That's just my ego mind that's trying to stop me. It's trying to keep me in a comfort zone. I'm going to move forward today with some kind of movement. I remember Paul talking about when I get my heart rate up, I can start releasing some of this energy because it's movement. Yeah, and the body loves movement and it needs it. Now, you know that there's tons of scientific proof that your body needs active movement to stay healthy, right? The more immobile we are, the less movement, the more that we sit, the more the energy field starts collapsing. The blood doesn't pump to the extremities anywhere close to the way it should. Your antibodies don't move at the level and the rate that they should. And there's so many other salient factors. Just want to point out that your physical habits are key. Now, your nutrition, now this is not just a nutrition webinar or Zoom call, but I do want to point out some key factors. What are you feeding your body? There's an old story by Zig Ziglar that he talked about. What if you had $1 million racehorse? Some of you might remember this one. What would you feed that $1 million racehorse? Would you feed it the best food that you could possibly find, knowing that not only could it enter the race or go out to stud or be a, what's the opposite of a stud? You know, the mare that gives birth. Yeah, because these are champion horses, right? You would give it the best food possible. Well, you're no different. In fact, you're more valuable than $1 million racehorse because you have a long lifespan. You have so many things ahead of you. Now, I have a question for you. What are you doing to yourself in terms of food and nutrition that you don't even admit to other people? Those candies that are stuck underneath the sofa, that extra junk food that you're eating off on the side, or maybe you treat yourself really well and you eat really great food, but it's the way you talk to yourself. Like when I spoke to a potential client today, she was saying, yeah, maybe it's what I say to myself when I'm eating. Exactly. It doesn't matter necessarily what you eat and drink. It matters what you tell yourself about what you eat and drink as well. I, by all means, would suggest that you have organic foods, wonderful nutrition, nutrient supplements, and hydration. Having said that, if you're stressed about trying to get all that great food, you're missing the point of the quality and the presence of mind while you're eating it or while you're consuming it. Now, the next one, and I mentioned this to you as we started the call, all of you, even as you're listening to this as a video, should have plenty of water there. I'm going to take some right now to hydrate your body. How much is plenty? Minimum of 2 quarts a day. The highest quality water that you can find. If you drink tap water, please stop today. Let this be the last day that you drink tap water, because what's coming out of that tap is combinations of fluoride, chlorine, the forever chemicals that are based on the movie called Dark Waters, you know, the whole PFOA stuff that DuPont started, and are now, it's in our water tables. Okay, so it's not coming out unless you filter it. So filter your water. I'm not suggesting getting bottled water, because that's another whole issue for recycling issues that the planet is just not having a fun time about. Make sure you get the highest quality water. I filter every drop that I drink, and my dog, who's sitting at my feet right now, every drop of water he's ever had has been filtered, activated water. So now on to the next step. Here's where it gets really fun. This is why we've all come here tonight, right? It's all about regeneration. What is it? What is regeneration? The spark that I felt when the doctor said what he said to me when he looked at my x-rays, it conflicted with what I felt, that the body always knows how to heal itself. I was faced with something that was different than what I believed. Oh, what am I going to do here? Whoa. So, you know, we all have coming to Jesus moments. We all have these moments of like, wow, okay, nothing could get my attention like this is getting my attention. It woke me up. And this awakening is awakening your healer within, which is the regenerative force. You could do this through any number of modalities. It's my job and my privilege and my honor to help you find this healer within you. It is innate within you. Whether someone has taught this or whether you've heard it, or whether you feel it, and even if you've never felt that you've got this innate healer, it is there. How do we know? Because the same energy that created your body heals your body. And you have a connection to that healing force every moment of the day. Otherwise, you wouldn't be alive. You would leave the body and they'd say, it was nice knowing that person. Rest in peace. But you're not ready for that. None of us are, right? And this innate ability of regeneration, which is the key, is what we're going to be talking about now. All right? So let's go. It knows how to heal. It knows, when I say it, that healing force, you can call it the chi, you call it the presence, you call it the God force, whatever you feel comfortable with calling it, is this regenerative, restorative power that when we get in touch with it, it does things that the mind just simply doesn't understand. And frankly, the mind can step back for a moment or two, right? Let's yield to this force. Let's start tapping into it with some regularity. Now, before we go further with that whole piece of restoration, it's important to point out I'm wondering which piece here to share with you. A wonderful friend of mine, when faced with a dire circumstance, was working with a healer. And I was asked to be part of this session, so I was present when this conversation was going on. And this healer was asking my friend, why did you create this issue? And my friend just stopped in their tracks. And you could see that it was visibly shaking them, literally. It was like a deeper coming to Jesus moment, you know, like you're crossing the chasm, you're looking down, and you're realizing that the thing you feared most is staring back at you, but it's not what you thought it was. It's not something fearful. Now the energy is starting to come up, right? Something that we suppressed for all these years is starting to reveal itself, and that what's being revealed is the purpose. So you're looking beneath the surface and you're inquiring, what is the purpose? Why did I create this in my life? What's the challenge mean in my life that it's giving me? Why did you create it? As you're listening to this as a video, as a replay, whatever it is, I want you to pause this now and take your time. I want you to meditate on this. For those of you that are live, I'm inviting you to do this offline tonight. Why did you create this physical challenge for yourself? Don't ask from your mind. Close your eyes. Ask from your body. Ask from your heart. And you're going to get an answer that you may, when I say you, your mind may dispute, that you may not believe. You may go, well, I don't know about that. That's okay. Trust it. Write it down. Please don't just take it for face value. Write it down and do this process a couple more times and ask, what is this thing in my body? What is going on and what is its purpose? What is its lesson? Because it's not an accident. This is part of the good news. Now, I have a question for you, and I ask this of pretty much everyone that I work with. It's a little uncomfortable at first, but I promise you it gets better. Are you willing to let go of your old self that created this issue? Breathe into that just for a moment. What do I mean by old self? Well, if you're listening to my voice and you can hear me in this moment, this is your present moment self that's listening. So your old self is the one that collected all these old thoughts and emotions and behaviors and experiences, especially the traumas and whatever heaviness that created the lack of ease in your body, the dis-ease. So are you willing to let go of that old self? Letting go is probably one of the hardest things for us to do as human beings, because as one of my clients that I was recently speaking to, she said, wow, that's a deep one. You got me, Paul, on that question. Like, I don't have I can feel it. It's kind of stirring in me. It's kind of shaking me up. Because what we're saying is, if you were free of this issue, if this issue no longer was in your life, who would you be? This is profound. If I no longer have this affliction, challenge, physical issue, heaviness, energy, whatever, who am I? Free of it. This is an invitation from the universe coming through me. This is your clarion call, your calling, so to speak, to imagine what it's like to be free of the issue. I don't mean just up in your head. What I mean is, again, offline, take this question. Am I willing to let go of my old self that created this issue? Sleep on it. Meditate on this for the next couple of days. Listen to your old self. Listen to your new self. Listen to the God self that's purifying all those thoughts, emotions, old behaviors, traumas, karma, you name it. And you may be pleasantly surprised with what you learn. Because what this is at a very deep level is your identity level. And who are you? You're not a stack of physical cells. You're not a stack of symptoms. You're not all of the problems in your life. Those are things that are like sidebars that are trying to get your attention and trying to distract you from who you really are. The ego is the central player in that issue, and it splinters and it fragments. It makes things more interesting to be here on planet Earth. But if you remember the thing that I mentioned when we first started our video, why did you come here to planet Earth? You didn't come here for some simple little, get up in the rocking chair, lay out in the hammock for the rest of your life. No. You signed up for the land of duality. You know this deep down. You can see the smile on my face. You know it in your heart. You know it at such a deep level that like, whoa, yeah, but it stinks sometimes, Paul. Yeah. It's not easy to be human. But releasing, letting go of our humanness is part of why we came here, why our soul came here to evolve. Shedding the skin of the humanness and letting the spirit emerge, coming through our heart, back to this whole thing of like, why? Remember to not ask the question from your mind, but to close your eyes and tune in. I have another question for you, and that is, do you meditate? And how often do you meditate? Because if you don't, then the mind is going to continue swirling with all the stuff that it thinks it knows and what it experienced and what it says you can't do and you sort of can do, and then it's going to doubt and it's going to pull back and it's going to say, okay, we can't do that. That's what the mind typically does. It's just going to play games on you. If you don't meditate at some level, even guided imageries help more than just saying, okay, I'm going to, no disrespect here. Some people say to me, well, I pray. Well, prayer is not typically meditation. Prayer is talking to God. I want this, thank you, I need this, whatever. The real definition of prayer, which most people have never learned, is when you listen. When you listen for the response after you've sent your prayer, close your eyes and you start saying thank you. And you start thanking not just for the stuff that's on its way, but you thank for the stuff that you've been experiencing, the challenges. When you get to the level of understanding that the challenge was created not by somebody else, not outside of you. The doctors didn't do it, your family didn't do it, your parents didn't do it. Nobody did it to you. That's all victim mentality. You created this for yourself. And knowing that and remembering that is to reclaim, at least beginning to reclaim your power, your energy, your wholeness. Now, let's talk about some fun stuff, okay? Before we get to the questions that you have asked, we're just about to get there. Now, in my journey, I started learning about things like prolotherapy, PRP, which stands for platelet-rich plasma, and stem cells. The stem cells that you're born with are the markers of youth. That makes perfect sense, right? The graph that I showed before, like when you start growing up, your stem cells are at their peak. There's millions and millions of stem cells that are active in your body. when you're, from little baby all the way through your high school years. Once you get into that early adulthood, it's almost like it's like a ship that reaches its height, like a rocket, and it starts slowly declining. And what happens to us as we age is we start experiencing a little bit of stem cell exhaustion. It's what's called the marker of aging. Now, this is contemporary. This is standard lore. This is what most people believe. But there is a thing called stem cell activation, which, in my opinion and my experience, is the fountain of youth. Because when you can turn on those stem cells, reactivate them, this is the great secret of the stem cell industry that no one's talking about. Now, I'm not saying don't get stem cells or PRP or any therapy for that matter. All right. What I'm saying is, what if you could learn an exercise, an experience, a new way for you to reactivate those stem cells? And this is what the best of the best teachers, who aren't doctors, by the way, they're not medical doctors, but they are as researchers, and they're finding out that in your body, let's say that you're over 50, over 60, over 70, you have the same amount of stem cells that are in there as a normal person. The question, as they've pointed out, is how do you turn them back on again? They've gone senescent. They've gone quiet. They've gone dormant. When I learned this a little over a year ago, in all the studying that I was doing, and I was doing just a ton of it because I knew that, who else is going to tell me this stuff? Wow. This fountain of youth is within you and me. And the more that I dug, the more I realized, like, oh, we're getting really close to the true fountain of youth that is within. So, this is an invitation for you. Now, tonight, we don't have nearly enough time to talk about this, and it would take module after module of a training course to teach how to reactivate it. But what I'm sharing with you now is it's possible. I've done it for myself. I'm in the process of doing it now. Can you tell? Do I look kind of like slumping into my seat? I don't act my age. I've got the energy of like a 40-year-old. I've got better mindset than I did in my 40s. I've got fantastic memory, etc. Without going into all of the things about me, I'm just saying that if I can do it, you can do it too. And it may take a little bit of time, but your body's going to catch up. Now, let's go on to your questions. So Helga asks, what is the purpose of disease and how do I find the unknown triggers? It's a great question to start with. And it aligns with what we just talked about. Helga, you might have already gotten your answer if you're listening to us live. And if not, then this question refers back to the one I was just talking about. And that is that, so why did I create this issue in my life? The triggers are the things that bother you, in other words, by other people, what they say, what you say to yourself. As I was talking to a client today, I was talking to her and I said, there's the triggers that others start off outside of us, but then there's our own triggers, our thoughts and our emotions and the experiences that we walk into that we initiate. So that's a simple answer to that question, Helen. We've got a ton of them to cover, so I'm going to do my best here tonight. Lauren and Topher both asked the same question. How can I have optimal health and longevity? Well, we're swimming in it right now, that you be the source of what health means to you. And in terms of longevity, I want you to ask yourselves this question. What does health mean to you? What does longevity mean to you? Because if you know what it means, that means that you're connected to the source that creates it. The movement we discussed, in other words, active bodily movement, that promotes health. It also promotes longevity. The things you put into your body, the hydration that you consume, but also the thoughts and the emotions, which I believe are more powerful than the things that I just talked about. The thoughts and the emotions are the terrain. And that's the hardest part. It's the undiscovered country within all of us. When I say undiscovered country, it's the great new frontier of how do I delve into these parts of me, which is the most challenging, scary for some people. Doesn't have to be at all, by the way. It can be actually kind of fun when you're getting in touch with these parts that created the issue. and release them back into wholeness, back into consciousness. How do you know when you completely heal? Great question that Janet, or maybe Jeanette, asked. Well, I think that question is a Socratic question, because maybe what you mean is, well, first of all, I would ask this question: what is completely healed mean to you? Does that mean the absence of all issues? Never have anything? The knowing is one of the keys to that question, is a feeling. You don't know something just with your mind, you know it in your body. So if you feel lack of ease, that tells you that something's going on. Does it mean that you're not healed? No, no. The mind asks questions like these, all right? That's one great reminder I'm going to bring up a couple times as I go through these questions. Nothing wrong with asking them, but keeping in mind, pun intended, that the mind is the one that creates the questions, that presumes that we don't have the thing that we're wanting. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. How can I maintain a positive approach to my aging body? This is RK. Don't know what those initials stand for. So RK, what is aging to you? We always want to go beneath the question itself. Like, is aging good? Is it bad? If your belief that aging is bad, that's part of the problem. What if aging is a gracefulness? What if it allows you to experience things that you couldn't do in your youth, right? The old phrase, if age only knew, how does it go? If youth only could, if age only knew. Well, what if we brought those two together? The youthfulness and the knowingness of the older years, and bring those together, and that would be like it's almost perfection, you know? It's like heaven on earth. The positive approach would be, how can I step back from my mind and not judge myself as I'm going through this process of rejuvenation, restoration, and regeneration? How can I give myself a break in the meantime? You know, Qigong, Tai Chi, yoga, taking walks, getting your heart rate up, really good nutrition, and some really cool people in your life, mentors, healers, coaches, counselors. Now, a lot of people wrote in about joints and arthritis stuff, and maybe that's because of, you know, my own story. And I can speak from experience that it's not a fun thing when you're told that you have osteo this and osteo that, right? But my immediate question was, what? Wait, that doesn't make sense. My ankles are in great shape. My knees are in great shape. My elbows, my shoulders, every other joint in my body except for the hips. Here's what I did not tell you. Well, actually, I told you a little bit of it. And as I had to dig deeper and find out what's going on in my body, I realized that the last place that I hid the grief of my partner's passing was my hips. Interesting. So as I answer some of these questions, I want you to keep in mind, what issue, what traumas or trauma in your life, what was going on before you had the joint issue or the arthritis issue? So Jerry asks how to relieve pain in the hips and joints. All right. Well, what I was just talking about, and for the rest of these questions, they're very similar. How to regenerate cartilage, Takara says. How do I heal bone loss after the loss of a child? Now that's a different thing, but it's also traumatic, Tammy. You know, I mean, my heart's out to you. All our hearts are out to you for the loss of your sweetheart, your little kid, your little baby. The real key here is getting in touch with what was going on in my life at that time. Interesting. Yeah. It might be scary at first. It might be like, oh God, I don't want to go back there again. Well, please don't suppress it. Please don't avoid getting in touch with the issue. And if you need help, reach out. Reach out to someone like me or someone else. You know, I don't mean just a standard psychologist. You can if you want, but I mean someone who can really listen to what's happening inside of you with more than just a transactional psychoanalytical approach. Empathically, what's happening under the skin in the emotional terrain, not just about your mom and your dad. It could be something from past lives. It could be something that your soul came in here with as like a primal polarity, it's called, that you need to experience in order to be free of it. Now, there's one more piece, and this is not specific to the question. This is global for everybody, and that is, so what if in my healing process it's waking me up, right? And what if it gets even better as I start helping others free them of similar afflictions, which is what I'm doing tonight, right? Helping others understand how to restore and regenerate this beautiful, not just body, but energetic being known as you and me. So the cartilage question is the same as the joints, same as the hips, etc. These are all physical manifestations of what's going on in the body. As Cindy asked, she's asking pretty much the same question. So there's about 4 or 5 of you that all said there's arthritic stuff going on, pain in the hips, pain in the knees, etc. All of that is stuck energy. The challenge with using drugs on that approach is it's just going to mask symptoms. By the way, if you have any joint issues and you're taking any type of ibuprofen, stop right now. And the reason why is because it slows down your ability to regenerate cartilage. I was told that first year when I started doing my regenerative journey, and I'm glad that I heard that. And every good regenerative medicine doctor says the same thing. Do not take ibuprofen. The reason why is because it affects the joints, and it suppresses the proper inflammatory condition that's supposed to go on when the cellular restoration needs to happen. And what happens with ibuprofen is it turns that down, it suppresses it. So it ruins your ability to regenerate cartilage. Please, everybody be mindful of that. What happens if you're in pain? Well, try CBD. If you had to take, if the pain was still worse, then go with something like Tylenol, but low dosage, like hopefully lower than 200 milligrams, depending on your level of pain. If you've got questions about that specifically, you can ask me, on the sideline or through a clarity session, etc. So anything that's in joints, arthritis, etc. Now let's talk about this energetically and purpose-wise. Those joints in the hips represent the ability to be flexible and how to move forward in life. So for me, the feeling was, how can I move forward in life when my soulmate left? Wow. And the subconscious is more like left me. Yeah, wow. Yeah, that's a stickler. So I had to clear and heal the part that felt like it was left behind. Abandoned was the key. That was the core of my issue. I worked with one particular healer that helped me clear that. It took several sessions, by the way. And it turned out to be a very, very deep past life issue where my heart was broken time after time after time. So who did I meet in this lifetime? I met this person who was a heart master, Susan Castle. Makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Yeah. So when she goes, Paul he was forced to realize that it wasn't about her anymore. Who am I without her? Oof. Whoa, talk about a mind bender. Those of you that have had a partner or a sweetheart pass away, you know what I mean. And those type of things really affect joints, especially hip joints and the psoas muscles, by the way, because when they start tightening up, you can't move the same way. You feel like you're tight when you're getting up out of a chair. All this can be healed and regenerated, by the way. Okay. Now, longevity, which is the crux of everything we're talking about, but one specific person, Lauren, asked the question, so how can I improve my longevity? Well, what is longevity to you? Like, how long do you want to live? Like if longevity means how long you live, so ask yourself, okay, how old am I now? How old do I want to be? You can improve your longevity just by saying, okay, what do I love in life? What's my purpose? How do I want to move forward? If what you mean is with joy in your energy, and so how you move lightly, gracefully, that's a different story. But I think, Lauren, what you might mean is, how can I increase my lifespan? Well, we're all doing it on a daily basis with your thoughts, your emotions, your choices that you make, your behaviors, what you put in your body, the exercises that you do, more importantly, of how you see life itself. Do you see life as a challenge? Do you see it as something to fear? Are you open to it? Do you have vulnerabilities? Or are you okay being vulnerable while you move forward in life with an open heart? Now, the next subject that got asked quite a few times, not as much as arthritis or joint issues, was vision. So Vanessa asked the question, so how can I restore my vision? I've had glasses since I was a child. And when we think about something like vision, and I've had experience with this directly, by the way, I remember one of my mentors taught me, he asked me when I first had to have a prescription for glasses, what was going on in your life at that time? I was taken right back to the moment before I had to go get glasses. And it was a breakup that happened when I was 19 years old. And it shook me. My heart broke. Makes perfect sense, right? Yeah. And I had no idea of how the mind and the body and the emotions worked back then. My eyes are healed, by the way. I don't wear glasses anymore. And for those of you that want to move further and work with me either independently, privately, or in group, I'll tell you more details about that as we go. Now, here's something that anybody over whatever that age might be, 65, 75, how can glaucoma be healed? Well, any vision issue, Linda or Lely, or Linda, as vision starts to degrade, the question begins to be something like, so what is it that I'm not seeing? What is it that I don't want to see? What is it that I'm tired of seeing? I want you to ask those questions within yourself right now. What is it that I'm avoiding seeing? I'm so tired of X. It might be watching the news. I'm so tired of watching this world fall apart. Well, then turn off the news and regenerate your eyesight. I don't mean to be a smart aleck. What I mean is, what is it that's bothering you that you can't see? Next part of that question is, what if it's not outside of you that you don't want to see? What if it's something inside of you that you don't want to see? I invite you to consider that vision is more than something that has to do with the eyes. It has to do with the visual cortex in the back of the brain and how it processes sensory information. So you don't see life as it truly is. None of us do. You see it through your lenses of perception. And as William Blake once said, when the doors of your perception are cleansed, you will see things as they truly are. I'm not saying that glaucoma can heal overnight. What I'm saying is, what is its purpose? And what are things that you can be guided to that allow its natural healing? Now, Linda and Lily, there are places in this world, like warm mineral ponds and places like that, that I have experienced personally. When I talked to a lifeguard at one of those places, they said, by the way, here's one story. I saw a man coming out of the water and he had a cataract coming out of his eye. And I said, say what? He said, yeah, it's because of the high mineral content in the water that it literally dissolved the cataract. Interesting. Wow. Now that's just at physical level. That person might have done other work. I don't know. All we know is they were ready for a healing. My question to you is, anybody that has vision issues, let's go back. What is it that you're not seeing? That's one piece, or not allowing yourself to see. And the other piece is, why did you create this vision issue in your life? And meditate on that for the next couple of days. And if you have questions about that, let me know. Now, to a lesser extent, I've got some questions on gut and weight issues. James asks, how do I address my weight issues, especially in the belly? Well, interesting. As time goes on, you get a little bit of that punch, going on. The growth hormone in the body starts dropping off. your ability to burn off fat, but then we also ask ourselves, well, how can I turn on this engine again? By the way, um, what kind of scale do you use? Everyone's got a scale in their house, right? I just got a new scale just recently, and I'm glad I did because it came with an app that reads your BMI, your body mass index. It reads your body fat percentage. It reads your total lean body mass, etc., all in one piece. I was really thrilled for $20 on Amazon. I'm not trying to sell product here. If you want the link, I'll send it to you. The name of the product is RENPHO. I think that's the name of the company that produces it. It's incredible. The light is going down here in my room, so I might need to turn the light on to get some more light. But it's one thing that you can start doing and be conscious of, not just your weight, but your body fat. And let's go back to what we talked about before about how often are we exercising, because the more you exercise, the more you turn on the growth hormone that's natural in your body. You activate the pituitary gland and the hypothalamus, and you start getting those hormones moving on your behalf. You increase your lean body mass, and respectively, your fat begins to decrease because you're burning your fat, and your lean body mass is increasing. So any weight issues can be in some ways attributed to how much movement are we doing. Now, if we're severely overweight, there's emotional issues that are driving that. And that's for another conference. Although we've been tapping into that whole issue tonight. So what's going on in my life? When did I start gaining that weight? Now, Carol said it in a different way. I'm not processing my nutrients and my systems are out of balance. So now we get into how your gut microflora, the balance of your gut, is working. And so, Carol, do you take probiotics? What kind of foods do you eat? Do you eat processed foods? Do you eat lean, like multiple amounts of vegetables? When I say lean, what I meant was, any type of foods that you're having. If it's animal stuff, are you having the leanest portion? Now, I'm not going to come off as a veggie or I got to tell you, I'm not going to tell you to become a vegan overnight. I'm not sure that would serve many people in this context in terms of cold turkey. What I'm here to tell you is that the shifts that you make in your diet and restoring your microflora of your gut is your immune system. It's the first and most important part of your immune system. So if you're not well, look in your gut, what you're feeding it. And are you taking probiotics? Are you consuming high levels of sugar? Because that's going to ruin your gut floral balance. It's going to create junk in your veins. It's going to create cardiovascular disease, by the way. So it's very important to get in touch with what's happening in your gut and what you're eating. Now, Patrick asked a question that was near and dear to my heart. So how do I cure cancer without chemo or radiation? Patrick, this is a very sacred thing. I think you should contact me offline about this question. I can give you some insights about this. I can't give a global answer to this one other than you have a feeling about what you can do within your body. And again, with my disclaimer at the very beginning of this video, I'm not a doctor. I'm not telling you what to do in terms of taking or not taking any forms of chemo or radiation, but the body knows. And the question is, what happened before you were diagnosed? What was going on in your life? I want you to reach out to me, Patrick, and let's get into a conversation. I can help you offline because this one could get complicated. I don't want to give you wrong advice, all right, or any kind of bad advice. Ricia asks, how can I lower my high blood pressure? Well, high blood pressure typically it's got some hypertension involved. Like that means like I have emotions flying around. Let me go turn my light on here real quick, and I'll be right back. That should help, right? Maybe a little bit of shadow. Okay, whatever. Doesn't matter. With high blood pressure, there's hypertension that's simmering underneath the surface. And so one thing that you can really start doing to yourself is doing breathing exercises. Get in touch with your heart. For those of you that have serenity, you know you can practice the serenity breath that brings down the stress and increases your HRS, which is your heart resonance score. Again, that's something offline we can talk about. Blood pressure almost always is related to the stress that we put ourselves through. Secondarily, it's diet and things like salt content. You know, how much salt are you consuming in your life? You could do all the right things nutritionally and still have high blood pressure. And what that means is there's some tension on the inside that's creating the tightness. I invite you, Ricia, to release the tightness by finding some way to meditate and release that pressure and the emotions that are underneath it. Reaching out to someone like me or other mentors, counselors, therapists that can help you unleash and heal the stuff that's creating the blood pressure on the inside. Paula had mentioned that she had burning nerve pain in the tongue and other parts of the body. And the vibe that I get about something like that is that there's some issue that happens maybe younger in life or that's not a thing that's caused by something that is physical. So many of you, one of the simplest ways to solve this stuff is to have some form of therapy to delve into what are the parts that are creating these physical symptoms trying to tell you. Remember when we talked about what's the purpose of this issue in this disease? Finding the purpose, finding the source, finding the traumas that created those issues at the physical level are the key. And as I was mentioning to a client today, when you start feeling the intensity of it to the point where you say, okay, I've got to do something about this, what that means is now is the time. Those parts that create these physical issues, these symptoms, are literally saying, now is the time. I'm ready to release. The challenge, if you suppress them with drugs or other forms of coping behaviors that aren't healthy, is it'll push the symptoms down, but unfortunately is the energy underneath it has to go somewhere. And it'll create other forms of dis-ease in the body or make the original symptoms worse. So one of the best answers to all of these questions is find out what the emotional reason is why I created this issue in my body. So in summary, your body knows how to heal itself. You wouldn't have gotten on this call or be listening to this video if you didn't believe in that. And unresolved emotions that I just tapped on or touched on, and the traumas that you experience in your life can damage your body, but it can also be healed. That's the best news of all. My invitation to you is to find the resources that can help you release these emotions and these old traumas. Whether you think you've had traumas or not isn't the point. If you've got symptoms and they're not going away, it tells you something is happening. You've done all these exercises, you bought courses, you've got the books, you listen to meditations, and YouTube videos and stuff, and it's not resolving itself. That tells you that it's trapped under the surface in an other than conscious part. In other words, an unconscious part of you, the part that created it. And it's now ready to release the stronger the symptoms get. So its invitation and my invitation to you is to open yourself up and avail yourself to the energy, the love. And what I mean by love is your self-love that allows it to release and heal. And what you release is that which is not yours will go back to source. And the part of you that is part of that thing that's stuck will release back into your wholeness. And that's the point of all that we're talking about tonight, is you come back into wholeness. So that brings us to a close. If you've got other questions, please contact me. You can have a complimentary clarity session with me, and we can delve further into this work. And for those of you that want to work with a group of people, what I'm considering, and you tell me if you're interested in this, what I'm getting the vibe about is creating a healing group that we get together monthly. It would be through membership, of course, that we could all do a couple things. The first one is we come together as community with the same collective intent of connecting with the healing energy and releasing that which no longer serves us. That's the first part. The second part is knowing that by connecting in a group, we create a stronger field of energy. In Qigong and Tai Chi and Chinese medicine, they call it a Qi field. When that field gets more and more of us together, it strengthens the field, even if we're not in the same room together. That's what's really cool, because we know that we're connected. Just like you're hearing me, I'm not in the room with you right now, and yet you're hearing me. And if you felt anything during this video, that's because it's happening inside of you. And that's through some remote thing of some guy going, you can do this. You can do this, right? So there's many, many levels of what we can do as a group. If you're interested in that, just message me and say, hey, Paul, I would love to do that group thing, and I may just put it together. So let's bring this to a close. I say thank you, mahalo. Thank you for your attention and your love and your participation. With a nice deep breath, mahalo to you, mahalo to the wise ones, our angels, our ancestors, and all that is. So be it now. Mahalo. Namaste.